Hi, my name is Professor L and I'm an aspiring producer from Portsmouth looking to make my name in the music industry. I take part in a project with Music Fusion funded by Youth Music. Today I'm interviewing Ben Jackson, a guitar and backline technician who's worked with Marshall, about his career, how he got started and any advice or tips that he has for me. So let's get into some questions. So Ben, first question I want to ask you, a really simple one. What music are you into? What music do you listen to on the regular day-to-day basis?
Well, I grew up listening to kind of rock, punk, metal kind of music. So that will always kind of like stay dear to me. But as I've got older, that's branched out to everything, I suppose. But I would say predominantly guitar-based music. I mean, if it's got a good hook, you'll catch me listening to country music and all sorts of crazy stuff. So, but yeah, I'd say rock and metal.
Next question, a bit more about your job. What does the average day in your job look like?
You do a bit of a day in the life. I suppose you get up to tip the trailer or the truck anywhere between 11 to 1. Load all the backline into a venue. Then each person in their role will start to build their own bit of equipment. For me, it's being stage manager as well as a guitar tech. I'll kind of assess the venue. Other crew members, for instance, audio department and lighting department might speak to me about how much of our fixtures we can get in, where we should position certain bits of equipment, depending on the venue size. Once that's kind of figured out, I'll go back to building my own equipment, which is positioning the amplifiers, plugging all that in, plugging all the RF wireless equipment in, and then I build a bit of a guitar world off to one of the wings, usually stage left. In that area, I'll build a workstation where I'll do my daily maintenance and prep for the equipment. So that's anything from restringing, changing batteries, scanning RF to just general repairs. I mean, working with the bands that I tend to work with, stuff gets broken, people are spinning around and throwing the guitars at me and all this stuff. So once that's kind of prepped and ready, at this point it takes us to about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. We'll do a line check, typically with just the crew. After that, we'll get the band in, they'll do a sound check. At that point it takes us up to about 4 o'clock, 3:34, depending on the day sheet, depending on the run of show time of the day. And then we typically, the time after sound check to the opening of the doors of the show will be any more repairs or prep that we need to do. If it's a nice smooth day, sometimes that's your time. You can go out, check the city out that you're in. If you've got a friend there, go catch up with them or just go find some good food. Comes around pretty quickly to showtime. Depending on the level of tour, I need to be either on stage or I can kind of chill until it's our changeover. If it's a higher profile show, I need to be there to make sure the supports are going on time and make sure that everything's kind of running smoothly. Then it'll come to half an hour before our show, which is our changeover line check. Typically for a headline show, you get about half an hour. Strike all of the support band's equipment, re-erect your equipment. I'd be plugging in my pedal boards, turning all my wireless packs on. I'll do a quick line check with my crew, and then we've got the kind of like 5-10 minutes buffer before we go on stage. And then it's rock and roll time. Get the show going. There'll be probably a couple of guitar changes involved, and then all being well, it goes well. The band will finish. We break down the back line, usually as quick as humanly possible. Load it into the trailer. As soon as that trailer door shuts, that's hopefully me done for the night, and I can crack a well-deserved beer.
Yeah, definitely well deserved. So the next question, obviously, with all this going on in the world at the minute, crazy times, how has the pandemic affected your career and your job?
Dramatically, enormously, I'd go as far as saying. We took the beginning of last year off as a bit of a break. We toured so hard in 2019. The beginning of 2020, January, February, we were just doing like little one-offs here and there. It came around to March and we were meant to be flying out to Southeast Asia, then to South America, then to North America. I basically got an email one day being like, oh, we're cancelling China, we're cancelling South Korea, we're cancelling Japan. And then just like that, they fell like dominoes. And it left me in a bit of a position where, just like anyone, I'd not really picked up work in January, February. So I was like, you know what, I kind of need the time off. This would be good. I've been so busy. And then as soon as the pandemic fully hit, me and all my friends were in the industry that do specifically my kind of work were just like, wow, now what? So a bunch of us got jobs driving for Hermes or Amazon or any kind of job where you didn't really need a resume, because a lot of us, I could write a resume and I could give it to Tesco and they just look at it like, this is useless, completely useless to us. I actually ended up getting a job in a paper factory, manufacturing school textbooks and exercise books and delivered them around the country for 3 months. You know, it was kind of the first 9 to 5 I've had in 7 years. But you know, my attitude towards it was, I've just got to keep grinding, keep getting some money in, and I don't know. At this point, we were still hopeful that we'd be getting back to touring in July. I was rather, I'm not going to say pessimistic, I'd say realistic. I was like, I don't think this is going to happen. But fortunately, come the beginning of July, the guy I was touring with, and kind of like a lifelong friend, this kid Youngblood, he hired me as his kind of PA, because fortunately from July up until December, there was so much to be done for the release of his record that having an extra pair of hands, down in London with him was kind of key. It's still been a bit of a hit, but you know, I've got to walk away from this, or certainly look back at this point and feel really grateful for the position I'm in.
Yeah, definitely. It's like I'm trying to come up in the industry, and having no jobs around is awful.
You know, an artist that is just trying to kind of like bloom in your kind of like formative years, these are the times where you need to be kind of going out there, making mistakes, getting into venues or meeting people, and you've had up to now 11 months where that's been, you know, you've not been able to do that.
There's no guidance, but we'll see when things go back to normal how people react and how things change. Fingers crossed. Yeah. On a more positive note, what do you like most about your job?
It's instant satisfaction when a show goes well. You know, you've put all the graft in that day, and it is a day by day sort of job. Yeah, you at the end of the tour, you look back and it's a block. Day by day, you were kind of riding it by the skin of your teeth, and you're only as good as your last gig. You can have like 20 really good shows, and you could royally screw up on one, and that's the one that will haunt you. And trust me, I've had them. But yeah, I'd say that it's the kind of excitement and the pressure. It makes you kind of have to perform. You're not performing on stage, but you still have to bring your A game, and when you don't, yeah, it's devastating.
Yeah, I can imagine it is. So my next question is, what's your favourite project that you've worked on with Marshall in the past?
Yeah, I used to work with a metal band called While She Sleeps. They got involved with Marshall maybe 6 years ago, and they've done some really, really cool stuff with Marshall. Working for those guys, I mean, it's credit to them, but their kind of creative like vision, just odd stuff that your bands wouldn't tend to do. You've made like changes to the amp casings, and you've obviously got the amplifier itself, and you've got the wooden box it sits in, and those lads are just like, do you know what, we're going to strip all the cover off it, and then I'm going to put like a bit of plexi plastic glass on the front so you can see the valves coming through. The stuff that they tend to do is some of the the most favourite stuff that I've been a part of.
That sounds amazing. So my next question for you, Ben, is what was your first job? First job in general.
Right.
Well, my first job was a Saturday boy at a record store.
Wow.
When they existed, an independent record store in Halifax, West Yorkshire, called Bradley's Records. I used to work Saturdays. I think I got paid like 20 quid, and I probably never left with any money because I just buy CDs, and they obviously give me them really cheap, so I'd buy more. I probably actually spent more money than I made.
I started off at Burger King.
Nice.
You done better than me there.
Oh, some of the most successful people I know in music had like the first jobs at McDonald's and Subway.
Yeah, flipping Whoppers.
Yeah, you've got to do it. Got to do it.
So, how did you end up in this career?
By absolute love of wanting to be in a band and play music, being surrounded by that, and being quite driven, I suppose, in wanting to make sure I stayed within the industry. I had opportunities to work with other bands because I had a van. I had a van that with seats in that I drove my band around in. So there was these opportunities came up where international bands would come over, and my buddy who kind of got into touring would say, oh Ben, drive this band for £60 a day, which in hindsight is absurd. And I worked my ass off for nothing, but it all worked out.
It's the experience.
Yeah, and when I kind of like saw these other crew members, I was like, that's kind of what I do, but instead of me doing it for my band, I could potentially get paid and travel the world and listen to music I love. That's where that inkling was niggling away in my head that this could be a career opportunity.
What's one piece of advice that you would find it useful if you could say anything to your younger self? Any bit of advice, what would that be?
Work harder. One thing that I would say to myself, and one thing that I say to other people that ask me is, the first tour I ever did, I was actually randomly helping to do merch and guitar tech for a band. Wild how I got it, but it ended up happening. But I got paid £5 a day. I only got paid on show days. I got paid £5 a day, but I was working like I was getting paid £200 a day. I would do everything and anything for anyone, and just made myself indisposable. Made it so, if I wasn't there, they felt like the left hand was missing. So that, I think that's like a really good piece of advice. It's a piece of advice I would give to myself again. But then also continue to employ that mentality. Probably got to a stage where my wage did start to go up a little bit, and I got a little bit complacent and probably didn't work as hard as some other people around me. And probably at that point, not that I've ever really lost any gigs, I probably was not the best that I could be. And then it took one thing or another for me to realise, and then work ethics back, and the last kind of like 5-6 years have been really good. But I honestly think, had I have employed that mentality earlier and sustained it, I would have done better sooner. So that's me being very honest about my own.
Yeah. No, that's a very honest answer. It's true though. If you do want to get somewhere, obviously you gotta work your hardest for it. Do you know what I mean? What skills do you think are most important in your line of work?
Kind of being personable. The 90% of the jobs that I've got have been because I either knew someone on the team, or I'd like befriended them through touring, and we got along. Because especially in rock music, where the budgets are quite a bit lower than other areas in the industry, we tend to live in quite close quarters. And if you're spending 3 months, and I've done many 3-month tours, spending 3 months within feet of each other, you need to be have the right attitude, be the right kind of person.
Yeah, the way you deal with people on a day-to-day basis. So if you're in an intern role, and obviously you're working day in, day out, the same company, but you feel like you've gotten past the point of being an intern, they're just making you do more and more, and you feel like you've got the skill set for a pay rise, how would you go about communicating that with them?
Even to this day, I have struggled to negotiate, and I struggle to put a figure on my own worth. The negotiating side of it is basically getting to a point where they need you and they can't imagine touring life without you. And then you say, look guys, I have kind of gone out of my way for you guys. I've charged what you could afford. You guys are making a bit more money. I know you are. Your band's getting bigger. We're playing bigger venues. I need that to be reflected on me. But then also you've got to be realistic, and if the band can't afford it, then don't go in there saying I want 200 quid a day. Work to what they can afford and work hard for them. And if you believe in that project and you give them everything, then when that band gets bigger, then you're with them. They want to look after you.
So my last question for you, Ben, today is, what do you think your job will look like in 5 or 10 years to come? Do you reckon it'll change dramatically, or it'll be more of the same stuff? It's a tough question because obviously the future moves differently.
That with certain acts, my job will stay very similar. For instance, I started off being a guitar tech with valve amps and pedal boards, and don't get me wrong, with Youngblood we still use all that. Neck Deep, for instance, or While She Sleeps, if I was to go back and do them, they're all using digital amps now. It's so important to learn this new equipment because you've got to be at the forefront of however the industry turns. And it would have taken you, once upon a time, you'd have to have 2-3 guitar techs, you'd have to have 12 local crew to load all these amps and build all these rigs. Nowadays, I've got a Pelly case with a rack in. I pull it out, stick it to one side, plug a ether con cable in the back, plug a power con cable in, and that's the gig. You're more of a computer tech than you are a guitar tech at that point. So as equipment progresses, you will find that for instance, my job might become less important, or you might need less skill, or just a different set of skills. If your valve amp breaks, then you've got to know kind of like circuitry and electronics and understand why a certain thing is doing a certain thing. With a Kemper, realistically, you've got to know how to fix a computer. So I'm not saying that anyone is going to be popping them off, popping the shell off and getting too in depth, but knowing how to do a firmware restart, it could be all it took. You know, like they're pretty foolproof. You plug them in, they work all the time, but when they don't work, you are screwed, because it's not something where it's typically going to be like a loose valve, or you can change something like a fuse or a valve. You might have like a ribbon plug that has come loose, and it's knowing, oh well, my LCD display isn't working, so realistically it's probably just a plug. And you've got to use a different set of skills. So if I've gone off topic, to summarize, I think people, they're still always going to have backline techs in the industry, because you need someone that needs to take on that responsibility and take that worry away from the artist, if something was to go wrong. But for me to keep busy all year round, or to continually get new job year after year with potentially different artists, I need to, just like anyone, adapt and learn the modern equipment that's coming up. The skill sets that you need will, without a doubt, change. And if you want to continue to, or if I want to continue to stay in this industry, then I need to diversify as well, I suppose.
Like adapting, because music changes like many times a year, like so quickly. As a producer, when like a new top of the range compressor comes out, they come out all the time, or something like a new reverb, or even a new update on Logic, something as simple as that. Everything's forever changing and so quickly, so you just gotta be the quickest to adapt and evolve, I guess.
And that goes right back to the questions you asked earlier, and we spoke about earlier, that if you are completely and utterly invested in your obsession, your trade, your hobby, whatever you class it as at that point, then if you find yourself in a position where you're chatting with someone that is also as kind of into it as you are and knowledgeable as you are, then you're going to have an instant connection. If you're like chatting like, oh yeah, the new update on Logic does this, oh yeah, it glitches and I can't figure out why it does that, oh actually if you lower the so-and-so, I know nothing about Logic, but then you've instantly got a genuine connection with someone. And also, like, there's so many people in this industry that you've got to stand above everyone else and be the best, basically. No pressure.
Thanks.
I wasn't the best at being in a band, so I found another career.
Right, that's it for the questions, though.
Sick. Love it, man. That was fun.
Yeah, definitely.
What's your Instagram, Prof?
Professor Al Productions.
I'd also like to give a massive shout out to Youth Music and Marshall for making this video possible.